Morning all. Barnet had an away match a long way away at Royston, so although it's in the Hertfordshire League, they're kind of on the other side of Hertfordshire. Anyway, a long journey to get there. I was on board too. It's unfortunately we didn't have John. He was unwell on this occasion, and we had a slightly weakened team as well. Our board 5 was Mike Jones, but we do have strong players in the club, but they just weren't available. So Mike was actually outrated, I think, by 30 points on the bottom board, and seems to have a losing rook and pawn ending. And unfortunately Alex's position is the exchange down, so it's looking bleak for actually even drawing the match. I think we've lost this match, which means that the top of the Hearts League has been blown wide open again. It's between Watford 1 and Barnet now, because Watford 1 also had this apparently I was told last night, this win from a drawn position, which Chris Duncan managed to win, so it's been blown open. I don't think Barnet's won the Hearts League for a long time, not one I've been playing for anyway. Maybe that's why. But anyway, I was playing black against N.Hutchinson, who once actually massacred me in one game where I couldn't develop my pieces a while back. But I think I've won before, I think twice against him. So I was playing black. I played French defence here. So we went into the Tarrasch variation, knight d2. I think the instructive theme for this game, I would give it undermining. It's got some undermining implications, so look out for these undermining implications as I point them out through the game. So the pawn chain is critical here. So bishop e7 already, it has some pawn chain implications. Really, I'm trying to prompt white to play knight f3, so the f pawn is blocked. And you might wonder, what's the point of that? Well, the point is the f pawn, especially after e5, is usually a point of undermining e6 later, for playing for f5 later thematically. And black tries to undermine white at d4. So the exploitable parts of the pawn chains for both sides are d4 and e6. Nimzovich talks about undermining from the base of the chain. It's like this pack of cards effect. If you can start undermining the pawn chain, then the position sometimes collapses for one player. So these are the thematics. With his next move, it seems white's not too bothered. He just plays knight gf3, blocking the f pawn. So after knight f6, e5, I was pleased with my position already. I got what I wanted from the bishop e7 move. I think Morozevich has played it. It's quite popular, bishop e7. It might even be becoming one of the most popular ideas, new ideas in the position, that waiting move. So c3, c5. Now bishop d3. I just played knight c6. No rush to castle or anything. And after castles, I had this idea that our previous game, which I think I'll try and link to in the video, I think he had played c4 himself and sacked a piece at some point, and I think it was kind of frightening, and I wanted to avoid that frightening scenario. So I was tempted here to release the central tension, which obviously, well, as a general rule, you shouldn't really play a move like this as a French defence player. It seems every time I do, I tend to do well though. But in this case, c4. Okay, I've released that pressure on d4, which means I'm giving white potentially a free hand on the king side, but I'm not going to castle king side, and also there isn't the f4, f5. So it's these two factors which maybe justify c4 being a reasonable move in this position. In fact, after bishop c2, b5, already there's an implication I'm going to be undermining this new exploitable part of the chain. So although there isn't central tension, there's pawn chain potential pressure coming up pretty soon. So b5, I'm playing where I've got the advantage potentially. So knight e1, as though maybe f4, f5, a bit delayed, but actually after bishop b7 we see this move queen g4. So a direct move hitting g7. I have to do something about g7, I believe. I suppose I could consider a retreat, but I just played g6. And now I thought initially, oh, this might actually be unpleasant after his next move, because instead of f4, he played knight d(f3). And the point is, if I try and castle queenside with queen c7 or queen b6 to try and castle queenside, I think there's a rude awakening here, knight g5. I don't think this is particularly good, this knight g5. It looks unpleasant. I'm just checking with an engine. It's slight advantages to white, 0.2 something. It's not as pleasant, I think, in this position as to play what I played. So I think what I played is okay. It seems to provoke, on one hand, a piece sacrifice, bishop g6. Okay, now let's have a quick look at this. So I've stopped white using that g5 square, but if bishop g6, I was going to play rook g8. I'm not sure about this move. In fact, white's apparently winning after this. Bishop takes h6. It's all over. In fact, this is a crushing piece sack. So in this position, white can continue, apparently, with queen g6, and this is plus 2.76. According to Ribka, maybe I should be using Houdini, but that's another story. But plus, it's more than plus 2 point whatever, so that's very optimistic here for white. So why is that? Well, if black's also losing e6, and then the attack could start raging on with check, and now the rook might potentially be coming into the game. e6. Let's give an example. Continuation. Check. Check. It's not too pleasant, is it? It's starting to look a bit horrendous. If knight e6 is forced here, I won't play knight e6. Then there's knight h2 and a sort of mate m5. So you want to avoid that with black. This kind of situation where there's a horrendous piece sack, keeping your king exposed. But anyway, thankfully I had the idea of rook g8, which is, I think, the correct idea. But apparently, even so, white could end up with a tiny advantage. Strangely, I thought this was going to be okay for me, but knight f8 here, king d7. This is the kind of running maneuver I thought was going to be okay, but apparently white might be okay here, even here for the piece. But I think this is a lot more practical to play. I think I could be getting back in the game here. So the key idea, the key variation here, why I can get away with h6 and g6 is this rook g8. If bishop takes g6, rook g8. So actually he avoids bishop g6, he plays h4, which is going to put a freeze on my kingside pawns soon. So I think white's doing okay here. Queen b6, because the diagonal, if he ever plays f4 in the future, I want to be able to expose the diagonal. h5, maybe that's not right. Maybe something else is better to keep flexibility. So I just played g5, and it's kind of okay for me, I think. So knight h2, and now I castle queenside. So I'm happy with this position because I've got potential b4 break. But he's actually extending my bishop now. He plays as though he's going for the attack on the queen side. This is kind of analogous to lots and lots of games I played where I've in Blitz, where I've castled queenside in like a Siamese King's engine, and the expectation is you're going to attack on the king side, but actually you can just win on the queen side, because that's really where, you know, the pawn chain wedge is here on the queen side, and sometimes you should just play where your pawn chain, the direction of your pawn chain. So here, this move, although yeah, my king's a vulnerable piece in theory, trying to exploit it is going to involve improving my pieces here, giving them squares potentially. Like if I get the d5 square for a knight, or the bishop on the diagonal. So b3, I don't know. I think that's already it's changed the valuation anyway to better for black. So b4, going for a queenside attack. I don't need to bother about anything else. f5 anyway, he's taking queen e6. So he takes on c4, which is really giving me a solid advantage now with this bishop. the pawns aren't so weak as they might seem. Bishop e3 with an ominous threat, but I've got a nice move here which I play. A couple of nice moves. In fact, the engine's like suggesting Queen a6, which has similar implications of like b3 and using a pin on the rook. I actually play Queen a5. So we see this kind of undermining at work now. This pawn chain, if it collapses on c3, then d4 is going to be weaker. And he's getting into a bit of time pressure as well. Here I took with the bishop, which might be inaccurate. Maybe knight takes b4 is better. I had this idea that maybe bishop c3 was going to be useful. But knight takes b4 has got a lot of points to it as well. Just wanted to tech for the reaction. I think the idea is just to get control of d5 really. I think that's a good idea as well. So bishop b4. So really I think white's best move here was bishop e4, which is the engine's recommendation. He actually played a4. I don't think that's a great move, although it does mark out the b5 square, so if he ever gets rooks like this could be dangerous, but it's a long way away. Knight b6. I've got a nice grip on key squares. I've got pressure on d4. The queen's kind of tied down now to d4. So this is the impact of undermining. It's making pieces highly defensive, the pawn chain more vulnerable, fragile to collapse. And in fact his next move is a big blunder. He is maybe annoyed his queen's there and he wants to vacate g4. Unfortunately he just blundered a pawn. Queen e2, he just blunders a pawn. So I can either play knight takes d4, I can consider something else and then knight takes d4. I actually played what Ribka is starting to think is the strongest move actually, bishop e1. My idea of bishop e1 is to weaken slightly the king, g2 in particular, to simplify a bit. I'm still going to win d4, which I do now. So he takes on d4, and now we get a huge blunder. He's got about 7 minutes left, but there's a huge blunder now, missing the threat totally. Maybe he's concerned about rook h4 here and wanted to block against rook h4, but unfortunately his next move, I wonder if you can spot it, why this is a horrendous blunder. If I give you 10 seconds, I'll turn off the engine now anyway. So if I give you 10 seconds here, starting from now. Okay, simple. Rook d2. He's just lost an entire bishop. So queen e3, I snap off a bishop. It's always good news to be a piece up, especially when you've got a bishop on the diagonal pointing at g2, which was made possible by the opponent's pawn operations, b3 and bc earlier. So I'm happy here. I think I'm winning. But let's finish it off nicely. So I play queen d5 with a particular idea in mind, that queen g3. There's a nice little move here, which when I checked earlier, Ribka seemed to like as well. If I give you 10 seconds, can you spot this next move to try and get an accelerated attack against the white king? So 10 seconds now. Okay, I play a little decoy move, rook c3. So if queen takes c3, there's queen g2 mate. So he puts the knight in the way. I play queen e4, keeping this battery going on g2. So a piece down with his attack, break through with his rooks and pawn. Hopefully not. Rook b5, and I spot a nice idea here. Simple idea, but various moves should win in theory anyway. Knight d5, bishop c6 should be fine. But I find something I find quite visually attractive. I play rook d8, seemingly harmless centralizing move, like in a recent Nigel Short game, which I thought was a central positional move but had some tactical venom. Here this has actually got some tactical venom, although looking like a nice central move. It's not a coincidence, because the centre is where pieces have huge flexibility to attack on either side of the board. You're giving your pieces independence, so to have tactical implications after it seems only natural. Now I wonder, after a5, can you spot a winning move here if I give you 10 seconds, or you might want to stop the video. Okay, so 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, rook takes e3. It forces actually him to resign. It compels him to resign. So let's have a look at this. If he takes, then queen takes g2 mate. Again, that's sort of decoy. If he takes here, then there's rook d2, and look, that pawn has disrupted g2 protection. So I've got triple pressure on g2. It doesn't matter about ab. It's just getting wrecked, this position. Here it's like check and then mate. Otherwise, obviously he doesn't want to go in the corner, because then rook takes g3 and then mate on g2. So it's all over after rook d2. There's no real defense in this position. You know, if f3, then I can play queen d4, hitting the rook and threatening all sorts of nasties like rook e5 and thingy. But that would do there. Or rook f3, just winning the queen. So that's not good enough either. So it's pretty dire after rook e3. So it's pretty fast attack on his king, faster than his attack. But I am a piece up, so that's a bonus here. If the queen moves there, then rook e1 looks pretty strong as well. Back row issue. So that's the end of that. Actually, rook takes e3, bang. So after a neat centralizing move, the rook's giving that magic of independence, really, to be able to hit both sides of the board. So that's why tactics flow from that. But tactics flow also from undermining pawn chains, as this game hopefully demonstrates to you the fragility and the potential for mistakes goes up and up. The need for accuracy as the pawn chain's undermined. So the whole design of the opening, actually, with this move, bishop e7, I think it is becoming one of the more popular moves. And it's an interesting demo of how powerful it can be if white does play the casual knight f3. Then really, if it's not d4, it could be c3. That's a problem when white has pawns there to be undermined. So here, okay, I don't need to go in for any g5s or a6s. I had a sneaky suspicion a6 was going to be answered with c4. Try and rip me up in the sense. I think I've done a video of a game like that where I did manage to win, but it was scary. So I didn't want to play a6 here. a6 has got the idea that you can play g5 without allowing dc and bishop b5. Also, in its own right, it supports b5, but I think c4 had some attractions to it. It gives the position a kind of cozy feel to it, that I don't have to worry about white playing c4. And given he's blocked his f pawn anyway, that it's not so bad just to play it like this. But he blocks his f pawn twice actually now. So if this h6 is playable, which it might be, it seems, because of rook g8, then if I can just castle queenside, then I can continue with b4 later and undermine that chain. So I'm quite happy here, very happy here. My type of position is black in the French defence, where you can play where your pawn chain advantage is the head of the chain. And he just liberated my queen's bishop, really, as a result of this, and given me potentially the d5 square, as well as weaken his own pawn chain. So that b3, I don't think positionally it's not great. Yeah, in a practical perspective, yeah, it's going for the king, but it's given me a lot of other positional trump cards which I can use to make inroads to the opponent's king, really. So cb, bishop takes b4. So maybe knight b4 is better, but this is okay as well. Knight b6. So I take on e1, take on d4, so winning material, and I win a whole bishop now. It's always good news. And then we have this little decoy tying down the knight. And then finally this rook centralization, bit of magic to the rook's magical central move, with a huge tactical implication now used after a5. Rook takes e3. Hope you enjoyed it. It's put me back on 199 racing performance in the Hearts League, but in other leagues I'm not doing so hot. In the Middlesex, I think I'm 175 now, 170. I don't know. It's about as low as that. In the North Circular, it's probably a little bit better. But yeah. Anyway, comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.